Master the art of moving from one state to another state. That is what I want to bring across in this video. You are not the state, right? You've never been and you never will be. The state, if you're going to condemn the state. But why condemn anything? Move yourself out of one state into another state, right? Never condemn yourself, never judge yourself, never blame yourself, because that just puts your awareness, puts your attention on why you're not seemingly not good enough for something, why something right now is as it is. But that's kind of relevant, because then you just keep it in your awareness, keep it in your attention. The question is, what do you want right now? What is right now your goal? We want to right now start to identify with that. And I mean, you can go back and ask yourself a lot of times, like, why is what is right now appearing in my life? Why is that the case right now? Why is it as it is? But that will, again, only keep you focused on the stuckness, on what is there right now. No, you want actually to focus on the solution, which is the wish-fulfilled state. So what Neville said here as well is that you are not the state. Right? You are awareness that is identified with certain beliefs, assumptions, and just identifications, and just certain attitudes, certain outlooks on life. You can really imagine a state like a lens. You know, you have like different lenses that you can look through. You can look through the lens of poverty. You can look through that lens. You can look through that lens. Infinite specific lenses that you can view the world from. And dependent on the lens you view the world from, that is your subjective reality. Okay? So let's just say you want to be wealthy, right? You want to be famous. All these are states. Go into the state before you're qualified, right? Go into the state and stay there. What that means is that you don't need any there are no requirements. There is no prerequisite for you to go in a new state. So even if you've never been financially abundant, even if you've never been this or that, that doesn't matter, because via your imagination, you can go to any possible state that already exists. Otherwise, you could not even have the desire for that state. So desiring a state in and of itself already means that this state is available and ready for occupancy. The question is, do you occupy that state, or do you leave it alone? Right? Do you just like flirt with it and look into it, but never fully embody it, never fully dwell in it? So the state has all the things necessary to external life itself. I really want you to understand this. I have a video on this, which is called Let the State Lead. I will link this one above right now, which basically means that once you occupy a state, once you occupy a new identity, once you believe like in a new self-concept of yourself, then that has all the means in itself to express itself, to bring the right like circumstances towards you, to bring the right people towards you, to like lead you to the right actions so that this state can perfectly express. And now Neville says, you are the occupant power, right? You have to go into a state and dwell there. If you just think of the state, think of your desire, if you just flirt with it, that's not doing much. That's usually even increasing the desire, increasing the hope for it, because you now know it does exist, but you are not thinking from it. You're not dwelling in it. You're just looking at it seemingly at a distance. But you're the occupant power. That's what I also said in the beginning. You are not the state, and you're also not the circumstances. If you realize that, then you can let the 3D world, you can just let it as it is. And if there is something you don't like, something that triggers you, that's an invitation for you to go and to occupy a new desired state, so that your circumstances can dissolve in harmony and express now that new state. All right? So you have to go into the desired state and dwell there, right? Imagine a scene that implies you are already there. What would it feel like? What would it be like? What would imply to you that you have achieved the goal? Remembering on the current state, dwelling now in the new state, just deciding it. There are so many different methods and techniques. They're all leading to the same thing, which is that in the here and now moment, the only moment that there ever is, here and now, you've never experienced a there. You've never experienced the past or future. It's always the now. If you right now think about the past, that's imaginary. If you think about the future, that's imaginary. If you think about like a place called there, if you think about your friend's house, right now, if you think about the friend's house, that is still like you are in imagination, you are there. And if you go to your friend's house, then you are still, then it's a here, right? There is only and always here and now. So the question is, where do you dwell right now within here and now? That is the key thing. Look at it this way. See the whole vast world as infinite states. All states. States externalized, right? If you no longer see the world in like problem, solution, wrong, right, black, white, all of that, but just in states, right? States being expressed. certain assumptions and beliefs, in a sense, certain realities playing out, being expressed, then you can ease your way more into the whole consciously manifestation realm. And if they're all states and you are an immortal being, you are not a state. You are immortal. You enter a state and the state becomes alive. AKA you shift in the reality and then that reality basically opens up for you. But it has always been there. It will forever be there. Right? If you leave an old state, it's not that that state ceases to exist. If you leave a city, that city does not cease to exist. It's still there, but you're not occupying it any longer. You're not seeing the experience in that city. If you leave New York and you go to Toronto, then now you see everything that comes in the Toronto state and no longer what comes in New York. Same with the state. Right? That's why Neville also said the metaphor with rooms. Imagine states as infinite rooms. If you leave one room and you dwell in a new room, you start to experience the contents of that new room, of that new state, where you now have what you want to have, where you now are who you want to be. But the most important thing here is that you are not the state. Right? You are the one that's occupying a state, that is identifying with things, that is assuming and believing things, and that is then expressed. But you are awareness, you are I am. You are consciousness that is basically always dwelling in a certain body, like Neville said, in a certain body of beliefs, assumptions, and identifications, which is then expressed in your life, in your own personal subjective life reality. Therefore, you're not to blame if you enter a state unwittingly, and it's a horrible state, right? Let's just say you, like, not on purpose, but accidentally you start to dwell on a negative state, on an unwanted state. That might happen. That can happen. It will happen lesser and lesser and lesser over time. The more conscious you are, the more consciously you dwell on your desired states. But if it happens, then don't blame yourself, right? Notice it non-critically, non-judgmentally, observe it, and then move and maneuver back into your desired state to externalize that. So if you enter the state of poverty, you have to experience poverty. Right, you are bound to experience the contents of the state you are in. Right, and if you remain in it, you must go and drink that to the very last drop. Meaning, if you stay in that state of poverty unwittingly, unconsciously, which is of course why many people experience poverty, because they are unconsciously in that state. They don't want that. They desire wealth, but they have not realized that they can occupy that in their internal world and then express it out there. They start to dwell in a state of poverty, and therefore they have to drink it to the last drop and get everything out of that state. So if you go in any state and remain in that state, you're going to drink it to the very last drop. I think that's a nice description, that you're bound to experience the contents of the state you're in. And if you're in one state, you can never experience the contents of another state. You cannot be like in two opposing states at the same time. But you can get out of any state, right? You don't have to remain in it if you know it's simply a state. If you lose yourself in the dream of life, if you lose yourself in the state, in the circumstances, then yes, it's seemingly difficult, right? It's like you lose yourself in your own created prison walls. That's how I like to call it. You try to solve problems and you are stuck. You're battling against the world. If you know that that is as it is right now, that is one possible, reality that right now is playing out. That's one state you're in, but you can leave that internally, go in a new state. Seemingly the current circumstances, they will, not even seemingly, if you internally go in a new state, the current circumstances will to become unnatural. They will seem no longer like you. They will seem like old news. And once you stay in that desired state, new circumstances will be portrayed to you. If you don't know it's a state, you identify yourself with the state and think that you are it. That's the problem, right? Thinking that you are the state, thinking that you are the circumstances, but you're not. You're free to encounter the circumstances that you want. And if we go back to the beginning, that's why now you know why this illustration is so important. So just to summarize it, one more time, your internal state is the key. It's the number one thing that should be on your mind, right? If you constantly look at the 3D world and you take your cue from that and you let your internal state be like polluted by that, you're just going to perpetuate the same circumstances. You're just going to get same things again in your life, and you're definitely not going to encounter your desired circumstances, although they're still already in existence. That's why Neville said, you can either like think of a state, or you can really occupy it and identify with it and shift into that new state. How do you do that? By placing your awareness on that state, by becoming aware of that state, by bringing that feeling of what that would be like in the here and now, by imagining a scene that implies that, right? So if that's your desired reality, what would imply you are here? what would imply that you are in that state? And once you start to imagine that from over here, you start to really like, kind of like download that feeling state. You kind of like make that more natural in your internal world. You will be convinced that it already is so. And then maybe still for a little while externally you still see the old circumstances, but like I said, they will no longer seem like you. They will start to seem unnatural. And then over time, once you start to continue to dwell in that new state, you will encounter the mirror images. You'll encounter the circumstances that are in relation to that new state you shifted into. And they're infinite states. What that means is whatever you desire, right? What you desire right now is an unoccupied state. And these are good news, because that means that your desire is in existence. That means that whatever you want, whatever you can imagine is available and is possible. But it will forever only remain a possibility, an option, if you don't align with it, if you don't internally align yourself with having achieved it already. And that's what also Scripture says, right? The secret of manifestation is believe you have received and you will. So you first need to internally be in the state of having it, and then the mirror of life can show it to you. And that's, to sum it up right now, why this is my favorite quote. If you know, right, if you really understand those teachings, if you know that you're in life expressing states, you're expressing what you believe to be true and what you're identified with, but that you can change that, therefore get new circumstances, then you have the secret. Then you're free. Then you can consciously maneuver the law of assumption, and aka the law of life. So if you want to learn more about that, I invite you to check out the free masterclass where I basically guide you on how you can shift into that 2.0 version of yourself. Right? How do we shift? What are the mistakes that people do? Why do a lot of people struggle and fall back and are not able to, in a sense, like stay in the wish-fulfilled state? That's the first link in the video description, pinned comments. That's my free masterclass. It's really like no hype and no fluff, just straight to the point, how to shift. And if at some point, right, you might follow my channel, maybe you listen to other manifestation channels, but if at some point you say, okay, wait a sec, I actually want to apply this. I actually would like some support, some help. You want to be in contact with me. You want my coaching, my accountability. You want also to be part of a private community that is very active, very helpful, very empowering, and where everyone basically supports each other. And you want a system, like a structured way to really understand Neville's teachings and apply them in your life. Then I invite you to schedule a free 45-minute consultation call with me or my team, so that we can simply see if we are a good fit to work together. And if yes, then let's go, right? We invite you to enroll in our program. And if it's a no, then at least you have had like a really insightful call. You know more about your situation, you know more about your stumbling blocks, and you just talk with us, and there are no hard feelings involved. So that's why I also invite you to check out the second link and apply for my program if you feel that this resonates with you. And with that, I'll speak to you in the next one. Bye, guys.